Yes, thanks for coming out today. My name is Congressman Keith Ellison, and today is a huge day because we are here to try to answer, and not to try to answer, but to actually answer this charge that America's broken, that we cannot afford to supply the resources we need to make sure we got a decent healthcare system, to make sure we got a decent environmental system, to make sure we got a decent social welfare system, to make sure that we got a decent social insurance program. We have answers to that problem. As some people are saying, we're broke, we can only cut. There is a big pool of money that really should be paid to help make sure that the United States of America maintains its competitiveness, maintains its essential promise to all Americans of liberty and justice for all. Now is that right?
That's right. Here.
Now that very simple idea, and the answer to that question of we're broke, is simply the passage of the Financial Transaction Tax, the Inclusive Prosperity Act, which has a bill number and has been dropped. I want to thank co-sponsors, National Nurses Association and the National People's Action, Credo Action, and countless other organizations who have fought for the financial transaction tax. This is just a small tax on Wall Street transactions that will allow us to accumulate the money that we need to meet the needs of our nation. And didn't America, when Wall Street was in trouble, step up to the plate on very short notice and help out Wall Street when it needed help? Well, now the American people need help. And it seems to me absolutely fair that we should have a transaction tax to do this. I also want to thank other members of Congress who've introduced financial transaction taxes as well, my dear friend Pete DeFazio from Oregon and Senator Hargan. Now, some people like to talk a lot about debt and deficits. So, well, if you really care about reducing the deficit, how about asking the people who actually did meaningful harm to our economy to help pay their fair share? This bill will add a small fee to a transaction of 1% on transactions made by the same Wall Street firms and stock traders who crashed the economy in 2008. Just by this tiny fee, we can generate $300 billion a year in revenue, stabilizing our deficit, allowing us to invest in things that really matter: education, roads, wastewater treatment, health care for our seniors. Now, you might think, well, this just some niche idea that some really visionary dreamers thought up. Absolutely not. Not unless you count 40 other countries as in that category. The United States would have to be in that category too. Up to 1966, we had a financial transaction tax, and I believe George Bush proposed one in 1987. Is that right? So this is a mainstream idea, but it's an idea that we're not taking advantage of right now, and we should. But you know what? This is more than a simple revenue generator. It's more than just a way to get $300 billion to meet the needs of our nation. By adopting this tiny fee to stock transactions, we can reduce harmful financial market speculation, discourage high-volume, high-speed trading, and slow down the proliferation of ever more complex derivatives. The fee would generate nearly $1 trillion over 10 years. Just like we have excise taxes on risky behavior like alcohol and cigarettes, we should also think about how gambling on Wall Street doesn't benefit society and how we need to have more thoughtful trades, not just trades for their own sake. So idealistic dreamers like Warren Buffett, Paul Krugman, George Soros, Bill Gates, Joe Stiglitz, Jeffrey Sachs, Dean Baker, Robert Poland, Larry Summers have all supported transaction taxes. It is a mainstream idea, folks. And it is an idea that's time has absolutely come, and it's a time to move forward on this. To elaborate on this idea, I want to call my dear friend Jean Ross, my homegirl from Minnesota, representing the National Nurses United, to elaborate. Come on up, Jean.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Ellison from my home state, Minnesota. And thank you to the other Congress members, all that are supporting this vital bill, H.R. 1579. You know, in the world beyond the Beltway, people are still hurting. What we care about is not the debt ceiling or the fiscal cliff, not the budget deficit. What we care about is the job deficit, the health care deficit, the housing deficit, retirement deficit. People don't need more austerity. They don't need things like cuts to Social Security and the other programs that we know as nurses help people. People ask, why nurses? Why do we care? Why would we be caring about something like a financial transaction tax? Well, because we see the problems. We're trying to heal people, to get them healthy and keep them healthy. And you can't do that just inside a clinic or a hospital. If I send a patient home on a doctor's order, I would like to know that patient has a roof over his or her head when I send them home. I would like to know that they're not choosing between medication and food. And that is what's happening in our hospitals and clinics across this country, which is a shame. Some of these people may have no jobs, some of them are working 2 jobs, some of them have what we call insurance in this country, and still they find themselves in this situation. So the illness has been diagnosed and we as nurses have a care plan. That's why for 2 years we've been campaigning across the country for more revenue in our cities, our communities, and for our patients with a tax on Wall Street speculation. Revenue from the people who created the crisis in the first place. The bankers, the brokers, the high-stakes gamblers on Wall Street, who were rewarded with bailouts and bonuses while our communities were too often left behind. Did you know the average of those trades is held for 22 seconds? That's an average, some faster. Nurses are united behind Keith Ellison's 1579, H.R. 1579, a simple sales tax, just like the rest of us pay. We pay it on our utilities, our clothing. Those are the common barometers of our everyday life. Wall Street needs to pay too. They need to pay to rebuild our nation. With H.R. 1579, economics experts tell us we can raise $300 billion or more every year for good jobs, for guaranteed health care, for fighting climate change. Nurses know how to fight for what's right, and we're going to be fighting to pass H.R. 1579. Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
And so now we're going to hear from a young man who knows quite a bit about Wall Street and the financial world, Mr. Wallace Duberville, who's a former Goldman Sachs investment banker, now senior fellow at Demos. Wallace.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Ellison, for having an opportunity to speak about this important topic. I'm here to report to you that the financial transaction tax, of course, will raise a lot of revenue, but from my perspective, what I can add to the conversation is that the financial transaction tax will be a significant benefit to the United States economy, away from the revenues that it raises. Far and away, the primary effect of the financial transaction tax is going to be on high-frequency trading, or HFT. This is a type of trading that uses massive supercomputing capability to enter and exit markets very rapidly for stocks, commodities, and derivatives at blinding speeds. Humans can't keep up with these speeds. We're talking about being able to do to transact in a share of stock or a future in a barrel of oil in a fraction of a millisecond. Now, a millisecond is 1,000th of a second. So these transactions are in great volume and at great speed. Now, this is, of course, too fast for humans to control. The buying and selling of these securities and derivatives is done through artificial intelligence. The mathematical algorithms that dictate what trades are made and what volumes are transacted. Now, this HFT is a powerful force in the markets. In lots of markets, 50, 60, 70% of all trading that happens is done by these robo-traders, where there's no human intervention. HFT's increased volume tremendously, and even a small tax on each transaction will dampen that activity. The question is that a good thing or not? In other words, does HFT provide value to the economy so that dampening it down is going to hurt, or does it actually damage the economy, meaning that curbing it would actually be a very positive investment? Banks, you got to understand that banks and hedge funds never use high-frequency trading to find a company to invest in long-term. They're not out there to invest in a company or finance a bridge. These speeds are useful for only one thing: to jump in and out of secondary markets and to exploit advantages before someone else can. That's the whole point of them. Sometimes HFT traders monitor markets passively to see what's going on. When they see a bit of information, they all move together at these high speeds and volumes. It's almost like a herd of impala across the Serengeti moving in one direction. So what happens? Prices move beyond where they should be, then they have to correct. The impala turn this way. Oops, we're back and forth. The people who know about these things, the mathematicians, tell us that what that creates is oscillations around what the price should be every day, all day long. And this oscillation is intraday volatility is what we call it. That volatility is very disturbing and distressing to investors, so they require higher returns when you try to build a plant or finance a bridge. That burden's passed down to businesses and governments seeking investment in productive enterprises, and what it really means is it adversely affects the jobs that Americans have on a daily basis. HFT is also used to create price distortions. They put massive numbers of price quotes into the markets that flood the markets, and then they're canceled as fast as they can. Why are they doing that? They're trying to flush out unsuspecting targets that they can take advantage of, and then give them the impression that prices are moving in a direction. In effect, what they're doing is locating a prey, baiting a trap, and then springing it to disrupt the markets tremendously. And it's not surprising that the research says that high-frequency trading inhibits markets from producing sound prices, and it makes crashes more likely. I want to remind you, not too long ago, May of 2010, the stock market dropped almost $1 trillion in value and recovered almost all the way up, all in the space of 45 minutes. Now, they didn't start the sell-off, but the regulators tell us that that HFT acted as an accelerant, like an accelerant that an arson would use, to cause that fire to burn very bright and then be doused. So that's what HFT can do for you. Now, that's a big event, and then every day there are small events that happen every day that disrupt the markets terribly. We often hear that it's good for the market to have a lot of buying and selling interest. If you put out 10,000 quotes into the market, you're going to manage to hit a trade every now and again. But the fact is that this is activity that's over trading and not good. The financial transaction tax will increase productivity and job creation by relieving the capital markets of the burden of HFT, and it's really time to do it, because from my perspective as well as the budgets. From my perspective, the industry is in the midst of a huge arms race in technology. You got to remember, HFT is only useful if you're faster than the next guy. So like a death spiral, they're spending more and more money to create more and more speed. Let me just tell you one quick story. There's a cable being built now between Chicago and New York that goes absolutely and utterly straight as an arrow through buildings, rivers, hills, whatever. The reason they're doing that is because if you curve a little bit, you lose nanoseconds. Nanoseconds is, by the way, a billionth of a second off of the speed of transactions. And that's where we're getting to. We're getting to nanosecond speed, and we're getting to artificial intelligence that's actually adaptable, meaning they're able to look at what's going on in the market and behave close to what a human behaves, they think. You should be asking yourself a question right now, ironic question. What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? Well, once again, the financial sector has demonstrated that it cannot control itself. The financial transaction tax will bring some discipline to the markets, and the rampant extraction of value by HFT traders with no value added in return will be curbed, and the safety and soundness of the market will be increased. Thank you for your attention.
Great job, Wallace. Thank you. And now Eric Pica, who is from Friends of the Earth, to give us an earthly perspective.
Thank you, Congressman. My name is Eric Pica, and I'm president of Friends of the Earth United States. We are a national nonprofit environmental advocacy organization, and we're part of Friends of the Earth International, the world's largest federation of grassroots environmental groups with member groups in 74 countries around the world. And we all support the financial transaction tax, and we all support Congressman Ellison's efforts to get the act passed through Congress. And I am proud to be standing here on behalf of our 150,000 members and activists in support of the passage of the Inclusive Prosperity Act. Now, the concept behind this act is very simple. When Wall Street and the banks were hurting, the American taxpayer stepped in with billions and trillions of dollars. And you know what? It's now time for those same banks and the same Wall Street traders to give money back in what's called a financial transaction tax. Now, when enacted, and I do mean when enacted, the Inclusive Prosperity Act would implement just a fraction of a percentage on financial transactions that would raise $300 billion annually in revenue. Now, you may be asking, why am I here from an environmental group supporting this act? Well, from an environmental and justice perspective, the Inclusive Prosperity Act recognizes the enormous human and economic toll that climate change, uncontrolled climate change, is causing in the United States and internationally. It opens the door for a percentage of this revenue to be used to help the world's poor, including here in the United States and internationally, to help adapt to the climate crisis, which was not of their own making. The Inclusive Prosperity Act demonstrates that there is not a scarcity of public funds to help these people, to help these communities. But it does call into question the political will of the United States and other countries around the world to actually do something to solve the climate crisis, to fund the adaptation that needs to occur, as well as to balance our budgets and our deficits. Congressman Ellison and the co-sponsors of the Inclusive Prosperity Act have the political will to challenge Wall Street, to challenge the banks, and say that we're not broke and that we have money. Friends of the Earth is proud to endorse and support their efforts. Thank you.
Now, there's almost nothing I do around here in Washington, D.C., where I don't look to my sister Barbara Lee to do it with me. Barbara Lee has been a leader, has been a mentor of mine, and has guided this country in peace and in prosperity and in so many ways. Please give a hand to Barbara Lee, California.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Congressman Ellison. And first, let me just thank you so much for your tremendous leadership and also for this remarkable legislation and for your vision and for your boldness, because this is a bold piece of legislation. And it took someone like Congressman Ellison to set the course straight and put it out there and make sure that all of us had an opportunity to work with him on this. And it is just so important that all of you are here supporting this today. I want to thank all of our remarkable activists across the nation who have really been organizing and working on this bill. And I have to just thank especially the National Nurses United for continuing to beat the drum. Because this is happening now, and we really appreciate all of your help. It's long past time for Wall Street to pay a financial transaction tax like they did in the 50s and in the 60s, when our economy was growing and benefiting the middle class and growing the middle class. Wall Street traders gambled the economic future of our entire economy, and we bailed out. The American people bailed them out. Their out-of-control tactics spread across the world and nearly collapsed the global economy. A small tax, and this is a small tax, on financial transactions will help bring some much-needed fairness to a system that can easily absorb it. And this is about fairness. Not only do we need the revenue from this small tax to make critical investments in the economic future of all Americans, but specifically, revenue from this tax would go a long way to increasing our health and development assistance, including securing AIDS drugs for millions of people who still wait in line for access. So it's past time for Wall Street to pay their fair share. All we're asking is for some equity and some justice and some fairness. So thank you again, Congressman Ellison, for your leadership on this very critical issue. Thank all of you for being here, and I hope that after today, all of our colleagues will join us in support of this very, very important bill. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Barbara. And now George Goel is the executive director of the National People's Action Network. George is leader of an organization that is doing some of the most groundbreaking organizing on the ground, on the grassroots level of Americans I've ever seen. I'm really pleased to be able to introduce George to you all. Please put your hands together for George Goel.
Thank you. Good morning. I want to thank Congressman Ellison for the courage to introduce such a bold bill and for being there to push back against this horrible austerity movement we have in this country right now. I want to talk about the issue of public budgets. We have a revenue crisis in America. We simply don't have enough money in our public budgets to be able to make the kind of investments that we'll have to make to rebuild communities, to rebuild families, and to protect our environment. But the good news is we know where the money's at. But it's not in grandma's Social Security check. It's not in grandpa's Medicare. It's not in our children's classrooms, right? It's on Wall Street, and we know that. So this bill gives us an opportunity for Wall Street. We've bent over backwards for Wall Street. It's time for them to show a little reciprocation. The bill is being introduced at a really interesting moment in American politics. There's a huge gap that exists between where the public is on taxing corporations and Wall Street and where our politics in D.C. are. 62% of Americans support the idea of a financial speculation tax. 80% of Americans support the idea of increased taxes on corporations. But meanwhile, many in Washington, D.C. seem more loyal to the idea of austerity and to protecting corporate interests over their own constituents. As organizers, our job is to expose that gap and then to close it. So leaving this press conference, we begin doing the hard work of organizing. And building between now and the 2014 elections, members of Congress' ability to get behind this bill and bills like it is a litmus test around who they really stand for and which side they are on. That activity starts Saturday with a rally, which 1,000 or more of us will be here in D.C. holding a rally in support of this legislation. And then on Monday, 500 members of National People's Action will go up on the Hill from 17 states and push their members of Congress to sign on to this bill. And then we go back home and do what we do best, and that is organize in our communities, create moments for our members of Congress to decide which side they are on, and then in 2014 we can decide which side we're on. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Great job, George. Awesome job, George. And now, Jennifer Flynn, Managing Director of Health Gap. Let's hear it for Jennifer.
Thanks so much. Good morning. My name is Jennifer Flynn, and I'm the Managing Director of Health Gap, which is an international AIDS advocacy organization dedicated to eliminating the barriers to HIV treatment for people around the world. Thank you to Congressmember Ellison for this bold leadership. And when we say bold leadership, it makes it sound like, you know, he's really stepping out and he's coming up with some out-of-the-box idea. And as people have said, this is not an out-of-the-box idea. This is common sense legislation. 11 countries in the European Union have just decided to implement a Robin Hood tax or a financial transaction tax. They recognize that they can raise billions of dollars to meet their social needs, their human needs, to provide education, housing, health care, and to provide jobs at home by passing a financial transaction tax. And guess what? U.S. financial institutions are going to be taxed in those 11 countries like Germany and France. And that money is going to go to provide jobs and health care in those countries, Germany and France. We could have that money here in the United States. What I love about this bill, besides the $350 billion each year that it could raise, and I said billion and I said year, and everyone always says, no, you must mean over 10 years, you must have meant million, billion, year. Besides the $350 billion that it could raise each year, I love the name, the Inclusive Prosperity Act. For too long, people with AIDS around the world have been stigmatized and shunned. We have suffered budget cuts on the federal, state, and local levels. We have had life-saving services stripped away. The fiscal cliff, the austerity budget that we just passed here, actually resulted will result in the deaths of 37,000 people with AIDS this year whose lives otherwise could have been saved. This has real meaning. Despite these budget cuts, we now know that we can end AIDS. And I want everybody to write this down. I know that this is breaking news to you, but in June of 2011, there was a study that showed that if we can just put a little bit more money, just a little bit more money, into getting people around the world onto AIDS treatment and to continue to provide life-saving HIV prevention and services, that we could actually see the end of the AIDS pandemic in the next 30 years. Imagine that. With less than a couple $1 billion from the $350 billion each year that this could raise, we could see the end of AIDS. That is the power of this tax. That is what we are talking about. And there would still be hundreds of billions of dollars left over for jobs, for healthcare, for education, and to fight climate change. Isn't it time that we passed a financial transaction tax here in the United States? Isn't it time right now?
Yeah.
So let's do it. I will see you on Saturday out there fighting for it. I'll see you in the streets fighting for it. We need to make sure that Congressmember Ellison's bill is the financial transaction tax that Congress decides to pass, because it is inevitable. The United States is going to follow suit with all of the other countries and pass a financial transaction tax. We need to make sure that it's a high rate, 0.5%, and we need to make sure that that money goes to fighting AIDS, to providing health care, to providing jobs, to fighting climate change, and to preserving education. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congresswoman Lee, for joining us. But I just want to let you all know before we hear from Bobby Tolbert, who is an awesome activist on the ground working with people every day, that it's not Keith Ellison's bill. It's the bill of, we already have a number of co-sponsors. And I want you to know who they are, because if any credit is to be given, it's to the people who brought this thing to my attention, the nurses and everyone else. But the co-sponsors is also a shared thing, and that is people like Earl Blumenauer, Judy Chu, John Conyers, Donna Edwards, Raul Grijalva, Barbara Lee. Yep, that's right. That's right.
A fierce AIDS activist.
Yep. Congressman McGovern and Holmes Norton. And so I don't stand here by myself, and I hope you guys can help me get some more co-sponsors. I'll be knocking on the door. You'll be knocking on the door. And here's the thing I just want to say. Don't believe the cynics. Anyone who tells you, oh, yeah, the system's messed up and it's just going to be that way, that is not brave, it's not sophisticated, and it doesn't mean you're in the know. It just means you've given up.
That's right.
We need people who are stalwart, who are persistent, who don't back down. Thank goodness Susan B. Anthony didn't say, oh, you know, this women's rights thing is hard. It's taking too long. Thank goodness Martin Luther King said, you know what? We're going to stick with this thing. We're going to stick with this dream. You know, and he said he had a dream. He didn't say he had an opinion or he had a grievance. He said he had a dream to unite and improve the lives of us all. And so with that, I just want to let you guys know that Bobby Tolbert is going to be on the front line in rallying American support on this bill. Bobby is from Vocal, and a grassroots organization in New York. Bobby, give it to us, man.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you very much. My name is Bobby Tolbert, and I'm a board member for Vocal New York. We are a grassroots organizing committee that empowers people affected by AIDS and mass incarceration and the failed drug war. And although I'm not a clone of Jennifer Flynn, we're going to talk about the same things. I just wanted to thank Congressman Ellison and Congresswoman Barbara Lee for being our champions in this fight. It's been a long fight, and I've waited a long time for this day that we have finally got a financial transaction tax at the gates of Congress. In this age of gross economic disparity on a national scale, it's the time for our government to be sensitive to the needs of the people. And in the face of the demise of the middle class, the dismantling of our social safety net and infrastructure, We need to urge our leaders to endorse an economy that works for all the people and not just a select few. People living with AIDS find it hard to survive when housing opportunities, health care, and nutritional programs are slashed until they're no longer recognizable. And while the buzz is about fixing the debt and slashing budgets of community-supported services, there's no real talk about how to generate revenue to take care of these things. The financial transaction tax, also known as the Robin Hood tax, is such an ideal that can level the playing field for all of our citizens. Now, we know that there's no quick fix for the economic ills that we are experiencing. However, a Robin Hood tax is a step in the right direction toward achieving a balance that this country needs to prosper and grow. The imposition of a 0.5% surcharge on Wall Street transactions is a minimal endowment by corporate America, which could generate over $350 billion per year to sustain our infrastructure, secure our social safety net, including Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, while also contributing to the Global AIDS Fund and help eradicate HIV and AIDS pandemic in our lifetime. This is why the 99% are very happy and proud that Keith Ellison and Barbara Lee are championing this effort and introduce this legislation to Congress. And we hope that all the Congress members will recognize the impact to their respective constituencies. You know, in a perfect world, health care would be universal, working families would be employed, and the benefits of a just economy would circulate throughout all of our communities. And although we are far from perfect, we now have an opportunity to move forward and establish a sound economic base for all citizens to stand on. We need a Robin Hood tax.
All right. Yeah. So we have time for a few questions if folks have any for us right now. We got a panel of experts who can answer. If there are no questions, then we're going to thank everybody for coming, and we're going to be fighting for this transaction tax. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll be out there.